Imagine a quaint suburban home, nestled in a quiet Bristol neighborhood. Now, picture a living nightmare hidden behind its doors. This unassuming house was a modern-day slave camp, where victims were starved, beaten, and forced to work grueling hours with injuries like broken arms. But here's where it gets even more chilling. The property on Brentry Lane was divided into two starkly contrasting worlds. Slovakian national Maros Tancos and his Polish partner, Joanna Gomulska, occupied one half, indulging in modern luxuries, stylish furniture, and a well-stocked fridge. Meanwhile, the other half housed their victims, an army of slaves subjected to a living hell. These individuals were forced to work 20-hour days, 7 days a week, sleeping on threadbare mattresses padded with cardboard. Their fridge was nearly always empty, a stark contrast to the abundance enjoyed by their captors. One victim was compelled to work at Tancos' car wash with a broken arm, while others endured chemical burns. A pregnant woman managed to escape, giving birth to a malnourished baby. When police finally intervened, many survivors were so emaciated they struggled to finish a single sandwich. One survivor aptly described the house as the gates to hell. Investigator Mark Morrison of the National Crime Agency, NCA, painted a grim picture. The house was a clear divide between the haves and the have-nots. Two fridges, one overflowing, the other nearly empty. Worn-out mattresses with cardboard shielding users from the springs, and floors caked in filth. The victims had barely any clothing, and we found small bundles of socks containing loose change. A desperate attempt to hold onto something of their own. And this is the part most people miss. The psychological control was so absolute that starving victims never dared steal food from the full fridge. Morrison added, "They were so malnourished they could barely manage a sandwich." These harrowing details are exposed in a new NCA podcast, Britain's equivalent of the FBI's investigative series. Tancos and Gomulska, both 46, were sentenced to 16 and 9 years, respectively, in June 2022 for trafficking at least 29 vulnerable individuals into the UK and forcing them into unpaid labor. Beyond the car wash, victims were signed up for night shifts at agencies, catching chickens, packing milk, and sorting parcels. The couple squandered £300,000 on second-hand cars and gambling. But here's where it gets controversial. Tancos targeted orphans from a Slovakian traveler's village, where he may have once worked at a local orphanage. These victims were primarily from poverty-stricken families who struggled to care for their children. Upon turning 18, they received a small government stipend and were sent into the world, where Tancos lured them with false promises of a better life. Morrison called it callous. Within hours of arriving in the UK, victims had their identity documents and phones confiscated and were put to work. The couple forced them to deposit wages from second jobs into bank accounts, then withdrew the money using PINs only they knew. Between 2017 and 2018, they stole £300,000 from these accounts. One woman, who gave birth before escaping, shared her ordeal. "We slept in a room with 5 or 6 other women, while 6 or 7 men were crammed into the attic. We had to ask permission to go to the shop and worked every waking hour. There was no time to sleep. When my baby was born, it was undernourished. It was horrendous. I kept hoping things would improve, but deep down, I knew he was a fraudster." Another victim described the house as initially inviting but ultimately a gate to hell. He said, "I came to provide for my family, but life in Maros' house destroyed me completely." Ironically, police faced a unique challenge, convincing victims they were abused, as conditions in their Slovakian village of Moldava and Bodvoj were already abysmal. Morrison explained, "Gypsy families in Slovakia are often marginalized. The village had poor living standards, electricity cables but no windows, replaced only by black bin liners after new ones were sold for money. Officers discovered that around 40 people had worked at the car wash over the years. Tancos not only stole their second job wages but also failed to pay them £923,835 in minimum wage earnings. Victims were beaten, threatened, and forced back to work even after severe injuries. One man, hurt at the car wash, suffered kidney damage. Others were burned by chemicals but received only minimal treatment. Here's a thought-provoking question. How can we address the root causes of modern slavery when victims themselves often come from such dire circumstances that they don't recognize their exploitation? Modern slavery is a growing scourge in the UK, with 19,125 referrals to the Home Office in 2024, up 2,000 from the previous year. Yet, estimates suggest up to 122,000 people may be enslaved in the UK today. Gomulska claimed she was merely helping the victims, but the jury didn't buy it. Morrison summed it up. These people were treated like commodities. You can sell cocaine once, but a human being can be sold repeatedly, and that's exactly what this couple did. The NCA's podcast, Underworld, Behind the Scenes of the NCA, launches on November 12th across platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Audible, and YouTube. What do you think? Is enough being done to combat modern slavery? Or are we turning a blind eye to this hidden epidemic? Share your thoughts in the comments below.